What up, ladies and gentlemen? Here with an awesome new interview. Um, Again, we're kind of pushing this small artist series or unknown artist series or just like cool artist series because I don't know. It's
It
just
got progressively better there. That was nice. Thank you.
I don't know. I didn't want to like push it off the deep end or anything, but it's just artists that are kind of making new music, cool music, music that should be known, but not enough people know it, I guess the word would be. I don't know. We need to make a new verb for that, a new adjective or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm here with
Up
Mr.
and coming, I've heard many times. That one is a big one.
But do you like being called up and coming?
Yeah, sure. There's a trajectory.
Okay, up and
You know,
coming.
it's
There we go.
yeah.
Um,
It's always, you're
so,
going towards something. So, which is what this is all about. So,
and I'm here with Mr. David Nagler of
Nagler. Yeah.
Nagler. My bad.
Nagler. Yeah.
Uh,
No worries. You're
Nagler
not the first. It's fine.
um of a really cool band called For As for the Future, which is kind of like a Brazilian, kind of funky, kind of jammy, just really cool band out of New York City.
Cool.
How are you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry I fumbled through that intro. Like I
That's
told
great.
you, it's way too early for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's Saturday. I mean, if people are allowed to know that it's Saturday, so
Yeah.
that's everything's different on the weekend.
I've been way too lazy just in general over the
Yeah,
summer, because it's kind of my break time.
yeah.
So, like even
Oh, yeah.
yesterday was a pain in the ass to wake up early. So I appreciate your patience and understanding and
Oh,
letting
yeah.
me warm
Sure.
up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since we're just being candid, I have COVID, and so I've got nothing doing. So, so I'm around, and this is great.
I mean, you seem great though. So I guess you don't have any like bad version of COVID.
Well, this case is pretty mild, and I just haven't really done much this week. We had a record release show last night, but we had to postpone it, which is a drag. But
Where was the
yeah,
show gonna be?
it was going to be at a club called Joe's Pub in New York City,
Sweet.
which is great. It's a really nice room and stuff, and we were very excited to do it, but I was still testing positive, and it was just like, oh, all right, well, I guess let's just push this down the road a bit. So it's going to be in September on Sunday, September 8th at 8:30. But yeah, but I'm just around, and this is about it for me.
I mean, yeah, I'm glad to hear you look great and glad to hear the postpone the well, I'm not glad to hear it's postponed, but I'm glad to hear that you got a date. It's up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
going.
yeah,
Record release shows are always so cool. So are you just
yeah.
gonna play the whole album in full and then whatever else
We're
is in
gonna
your catalog? Or
we're gonna play it in full, though not in order. We have a couple newer songs. One of the things that, when this project started, I wrote a lot of songs. I mean, I would say I've written about 30, maybe more songs for this group. We're not gonna play all of them by any stretch. But as soon as what was considered the first record was done, in order to just sort of keep momentum going, I immediately started recording new material as well, with the group. And so we were gonna do a couple newer songs besides ones that are on the record, and then one really fun cover.
oh,
Um,
sweet.
and so that was gonna be the show. And it was a larger version of what the band would normally be. I would say the sort of comfortable regular version is 6 people, but we were gonna have 8 people last night, which was gonna be really, really cool. So
Was the two extra people like brass, like sax and stuff, or what?
it was actually the extra people are going to be a keyboard player, because we
Oh,
had we had keyboard on the record. Stephanie Sanders played keyboards on a whole bunch of the record, and then I played keyboards on sort of the other half of the record. Um, but we haven't had it live, and so we're gonna have a keyboard player, and then we're gonna have an additional percussionist. So we have, normally the band is a drummer and a percussion player, but we're gonna have two percussion players and a drummer. So that was what it was gonna be.
awesome. And then where do you find all the musicians? Because you have like really heavyweight musicians on your collective. It's like insane. I was reading your
Yeah,
Wikipedia page and it's
yeah,
wild.
yeah. I mean, they're just people who are around. I mean, it's one of the great things about being in New York. I've been playing music here. Well, I've been playing music here for over 30 years, but I started kind of, I was playing here regularly for about for the last 20 about yeah, the last about 30 years. And then but I've been living in Brooklyn for 25 years. And so just being here, and going to shows and playing shows, you just meet people, and then if you have something like in mind, then someone knows someone. So like, so for instance, from Maru in this group, who's a legend and is amazing, and someone who I've known of and kind of been in a similar circle of for many years. We can come back. I used to work in the musician John Lurie's office in the late 90s,
Oh,
and Mauru was part of the Lounge Lizards at that time. And so he kind of would have been in the office when I was there working and stuff. So that was kind of a really cool,
cool.
point. But David Lismy, the bass player and As for the Future, was the one who, when we were talking about this group, in its very, very initial stages, said like, "Oh, we should get Mauru to play percussion." I was like, "Yeah, of course." So that's a lot of how this just sort of works. Is you just kind of people who know people, and if this sort of stars align and timing's right, and then it can work out. So
I know it's sick. I need to nerd out here for a second. Have you been to the Brooklyn Steel House? I think that's what it's called.
Brooklyn Steel, yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
cool. It's a cool room,
dude,
yeah.
I want to go there so badly, even though I've no means, no know anything of how to get to New York, but I want to go to the Steel House. Like it's
Brooklyn Steel is cool. It was made. It was constructed by the same people who made Terminal 5. And
yeah,
Terminal
yeah.
5 on the west side in Manhattan is kind of known for being New York's shittiest venue, to be frank about it. It's just terrible. I've seen like there you have to be. I don't know where a good sort of viewpoint is for a band. I've seen a whole bunch there, and like I saw the Pogues there many, many years ago, and me and my wife were right up front, and so that was amazing. And we saw, and I've seen some other stuff there, but like I don't know, it's just like it sounds terrible, and you can just never find a good spot. And but Brooklyn Steel is made by them, but Brooklyn Steel is a much better version of um of Terminal 5. It's basically like they fixed Terminal 5. And because it's in Brooklyn, there's a little bit, it's just like a bit of a wider room, and it's cool. I was there, I think last summer for a show, when a friend played, and it was cool. So
Yeah, it's awesome. In Atlanta, we kind of, I don't know, there's no really too shitty of a small venue.
yeah. Is
Everything's
is the
just,
is the is the Fox Theater still a thing?
oh yeah, but that's like 5,000. That's
Okay.
huge.
Yeah, but it's beautiful, right? I've heard
Oh
it's like
yeah,
just
it's
beautiful. Yeah.
incredible. But like there's like a charm. I was talking about this yesterday with Billy Joel's drummer. There's something
Mm,
really awesome about just like a really small club. And we have so many
yeah.
clubs in Atlanta. Like in
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
Five Points, I think there's 4 or 5 just clubs across from each other.
Wow.
So it's
Yeah.
just so fun. Like the music scene here is just like bustling and it's weird with
Yeah.
hip hop
Yeah.
being the major kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
fun.
Oh, what man, it's so funny. I was just watching, this is a couple of weeks ago. I was watching the Outcast video for, oh gosh, what was it? Maybe it was Rosa Parks, maybe. And there's like footage of like kind of like a club strip there. And they're kind of everyone's out in the street and stuff. I
Yeah,
think it's
that's,
a video. I could be wrong. But it was so cool. And I was like, and it had that sort of like kind of New Orleans,
yeah, it was probably Little
kind
Five
of
Points. I haven't
Memphis
seen the
vibe.
video, but
Yeah. It's awesome.
Atlanta's
I
got
think
that
I'm
cool
pretty sure
thing.
that's the one. Yeah, yeah. So
And Outcast is just like so cool. Have you taken any
yeah.
inspiration from like Andre 3000's new album?
You know, I'm sort of. I mean, it's kind of like it was one of these sort of amazing things. I know one of the musicians in that group. This guy Surya he's not like a close friend or anything, but we've done a show together. I have a friend in New York, named Xavier, who does a show called Ladies of Soul. It's like a Ladies of Soul tribute that takes place every Valentine's Day. He's been doing it now for
That's
like
so
11
cool.
years. And I was the music director for the first 5 years, and it was so cool because all sorts of like old R&B soul and kind of newish ones too, like stuff from like the aughts and the 90s and 80s and stuff. Not that the 80s is new, but anyway, but Surya was the keyboard player for one of those shows, and he's just such an interesting musician. He grew up in sort of Alice Coltrane's orbit and stuff. And so he was really into like the sort of, very meditative music that she was doing at the time. And so it was totally not a shock when I found out that he was involved in the Andre 3000 record, because it's so meditative and beautiful
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
everything. And it's just so cool. And it's so cool that he's doing that. And it's just beautiful. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It really is. He actually
Yeah.
played a free show in Atlanta about
Oh, did you go?
no, my mom wanted me to pack because we were going on a road trip.
Yeah.
So, and it was at like 5 o'clock in the worst
Yeah.
part, like the busiest part of the city. So
Yeah.
I could not make it even if my life depended on it.
Oh,
But
oh well.
and that's the thing that sucks with Atlanta, because I thankfully have friends in the scene, and just random people I meet at concerts who I stay in touch with. And
Yeah.
like there's a Primus show recently, and I could
Oh
not
well.
go because my mom was not letting
Yeah.
me go. And I had a contact there, and he's literally
Yeah.
offering to give me tickets for free, so I could just, like,
Uh,
as long as I biked there, because I can bike there. It's a 5 minute
oh, nice.
bike. Except,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna. If I go against my mom, I might as well be
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, you're
So,
screwed. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah. Oh
speaking
well.
of textures on your album,
Yeah.
something else I was just thinking about is like Brian Eno, and it's because
Oh
your
yeah.
your album's really got that kind of Eno touch with
Huh.
the just in the background. Like if you
Yeah.
listen really quietly to the singles, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Did
Oh,
you keep that
amazing.
in mind, or was that just like a that's
Gosh.
happened?
I mean, is one of those individuals that you kind of like you like okay, well here's the difference. Like for me, this was like a Brazilian music influenced record
Yeah,
where it was like I love this music, I love these songs, I love writing the songs, and I love singing them, and I love getting all these musicians together and recording them and stuff. And it was done with intent, I guess is the way to put it. Any sort of Brian Eno stuff you might hear, though, it's just like kind of it just comes from years and years of listening to him and the projects he's been involved in, and sort of being aware of like textures and backgrounds, and like his influence is so massive that it's like kind of not even I would never bring it up because it's like almost like subconscious at
yeah.
this point. But I listen to those records all the time, and I love the records that he made with Harold Budd, and those are like, I mean, those are some of my favorite records. And Roxy Music, to go back even further, is literally my favorite group,
Oh, that's awesome.
of all time. If I had to pick, if you were like, what's your favorite group of all time, I would say Roxy Music. And so there's a kind of a big, you know, influence there. And I think about those records, and even like, just to get off track a bit, I was listening to the record Stranded, yeah, last week, which is my favorite Roxy Music album of
Oh,
all, and it's the one made after he left.
mhm.
But his sort of his thumbprint is still there on that record in such a massive way, in terms of just like creating a space. And so I guess that's where the influence is with Eno. It's like anytime you're creating like a musical, not, and I don't say you, I say me, because I would admit to it, but maybe not everyone would. Anytime you're creating like a musical sort of space, um, Eno is definitely a kind of an influence in that. And I think that's kind of a way to look at it.
A great way to look at it. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing would be though, do you want to have that kind of influence on musicians someday, or is that like too much power for one man?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It's great to be thought of, and it's great to be listened to, but who knows? It's one of those things that it's 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 one of those things that there's not really any point in thinking about, because it's not up to you.
Yeah.
Your role is just to do your best work, and that's it.
I mean, a very humble way to look at it, which is perfect, honestly, because you don't
Yeah,
want like an
yeah.
egotistical musician that always goes wrong. But
Oh, oh my gosh, no. And
me
of course,
too.
maybe it's because of where I am in my life that I can say it with complete certainty. If you asked me 25 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, let me
Playing
influence you.
playing the garden and everything. And
Yeah.
then I guess the question The hard thing I know because I've been lucky enough to speak to many smaller musicians. The
Hmm.
issue with touring, right? Because
Oh yeah.
if you're in that position, the venues may not be perfect, and then you got to find someone like. So, would you rather go on tour and open for a band, or would you rather do like a bar tour if you had the
Well,
possibility?
I will say for this group, unless I don't know, unless things take off in an insane, unexpected way, the reality of doing like anything that resembles a tour, meaning like being a week or more out, would probably have to be a significant opening slot for us
Yeah.
because we're all I mean, we're all in our 40s and 50s basically. And it's just we're not, and because we're a new band, it's kind of it's not realistic to really just get out there and do it. So it would have to be someone, who of renown who kind of was like, you guys are great. You have to open for us. I just feel like that's the only way realistically it could even happen. Like we're just starting to sort of talk about and think about doing out of town shows, which would be like, which would be not too far from here. It'd be like
Like
Philly,
Jersey?
it'd be like Jersey. Although, I mean, Jersey's like
A little too close?
Jersey's it's well, I mean it's basically New York. I mean it's one
Yeah.
of those you get back in the day, but it's also where I'm from, so I should
Oh,
know it. I
sweet.
grew up 30 minutes outside the city. And
Yeah, yeah.
so, so I'm Jersey strong, as they say. But that's sort of where we're at now, is just like starting to, play outside the city and stuff because everyone, is where, the age range I said, and some have families and stuff like that. So anyway.
Mhm. And there's one band I'd like to see you open for, and
Hmm.
that'd probably be Wilco. And you've got like a weird connection to Wilco, which is just super awesome. Would you mind telling the audience?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I made a record in 2016 called Carl Sandburg's Chicago Poems, and it was a record that I came up with an idea for somewhere in like I think like '98. Really, like I
Oh,
was reading a collection of his poetry called Harvest Poems, and I read the section of that was taken from Chicago Poems, which was a work that he wrote in that was published in 1916. And it's an amazing collection, very sprawling, of like almost 150 different poems. And just these 16 poems that I read to me were like lyrics for a record. And so I was like, oh my God, it would be so cool to make a record of this poetry and turn them into lyrics at some point. And so it was just one of those things I noted, for the future, as it were. And about 10 years after that, I started like setting them to music, and I was really happy with it. It was coming together. And then one night I was talking with Therese, my wife, and we noted that the centenary of the poetry collection was coming up in 2016. And so I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's a deadline. So we'll have to put the record out that year. And so I kind of, for like for the next year or two, I just basically worked on making the record, determining what I wanted the instrumentation to be, finishing the songs, who I wanted to work with, all that stuff, and then just made the record starting in 2015. And so at some point along the way, I determined that it would be great because it's a Chicago based record, themed record. And because I had a lot of Chicago musician friends, I was like, God, it'd be so cool to, have Chicago musician guests on the record. And there were some that I knew, and they're definitely, in, and then there were others that I had to kind of meet in order to do it. Robbie Fulks would be an example of someone who I didn't really know, but I met him and we talked about it, and he was into it. Others, like John Langford and Sally Timms and Chris Mills and Kelly Hogan were all friends and stuff.
oh, cool.
And so at some point during the record, when I started recording some of those guests, the studio that we were recorded at was the Wilco Loft,
Oh,
which was amazing. I
so
mean, it
you
was
met Mark?
basically like I did meet Mark. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mark was someone who, we kind of had connections in another way too, just being around. But he's such a wonderful guy. He's like really, really great. And so, anyway, so we did a couple of the guest sessions at the Loft, and that was just amazing being there. And so at that point, I had I had this song, Theme in Yellow, And because the tracks were at the Wilco loft, basically I was able to ask Mark, I was like, hey, do you think Jeff would be interested in singing on this? And he got back to me, and eventually he said, yeah, he'd be into it. I don't know when we're gonna do it, but but he's interested. And so that probably would have been, I don't know, somewhere around like September of 2015. And so the record at this point, by you know by the next month, was mixed, and it was like finished, and I was sending it out, and then I was just kind of waiting around to see like, oh, what are we going to do with it, or is there going to be a label, etc. And then on January 5th, which or maybe it's January 6th, which is Carl Sandburg's birthday, I got the track of Jeff Tweedy singing Theme in Yellow. And so that's the version that you hear on the Carl Sandburg Chicago record. Carl Sandburg's Chicago Poems record is Jeff Tweedy singing the song that Sandburg wrote the lyrics to and that I wrote the music to.
What an inspiring story. Like, that's so cool. First of all, the whole idea is awesome. And
Oh, cool.
I don't know, I listened to a couple tracks off the record. I haven't gotten to
Yeah,
listening to it in full yet, but
yeah,
it's just so
yeah.
fun. And what a like
Oh,
interesting
cool.
record. Now, I
Yeah.
need to give you my Wilco story real quick, which is that
Yeah, please.
when I started interviewing in late January, I was a dumbass, and there's a couple big bands that I sent emails to their publicist, which is the good thing, and their
Yeah,
booking agent for some reason. Um,
sure, why not?
and so for Wilco, their publicist came back to me maybe 2 months after saying that's
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
And I was starting to work with her on other projects. And
yeah.
then the booking agent never got back to me. I forgot about it until a month
Yeah.
ago when Mark came back to me and said,
Nice.
uh, Jeff wants to talk to me, or Mr. Tweedy wants to talk to me. Come back in July. We'll figure it out. And
Nice.
I mean, since I'm trying to be transparent, I had to,
Yeah,
I looped the publicist and I said, how do we work this out? And
yeah,
then I didn't properly communicate the fact that I emailed them at the same time. I
yeah.
accidentally made it seem like I emailed him after the fact, which I didn't even email him in the first place. And so
Right,
she was
right.
not very happy with me. I kind of got a
Yeah.
stern talking to, and I still need to come back to that in July. But that's my Mark story. Mark is amazing.
Wow.
I love
Yeah,
Mark.
yeah.
We got to
Yeah.
figure this out though.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a little bit
absolutely.
screwed with that. But
Oh, I think it'll work out. Well, once their festival's over, and I think it'll all pan out. I have faith. Yeah.
I'm trying to get some faith on that. That's like the big one that's been I've had in my pocket for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I hope that
It's
goes
it's
through.
one. I mean, it's one of the things I'll say. I don't have a lot of wisdom to impart. Nothing that I consider, but
You have
but a lot of
wisdom.
this is just sure. Yeah, I guess I do. Sure, that's fine. But a lot of this stuff is like, at the time you feel like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And then it's just like, no, it just fades. It's like if you're just trying to do the best you can, and you're not doing stuff out of, like trying, ooh, let me, in an underhanded way, it's fine, and it'll work out. And certainly as time goes by, you'll be like, it's probably the right decision, in fact. So it's fine.
I mean, I already kind of see that because um I respond to emails during lunch of school,
Yeah.
and she was emailing me during lunch about like getting a stern talking to and whatnot. And so all my friends were just there while I was getting like, she's like, dude, you can't do that, by the way. She was super nice about it. Miss Linker, if you're seeing
Yeah.
this, you're
Yeah.
great. Let's keep working together.
Oh
But
gosh. And then that's even weird, because that's weirder, because she's the
I don't know.
she's
I
the
don't know if
wife
she'll
of she's the
watch
wife
this,
of a
but
friend.
oh, she is?
Yeah, yeah. So
Dude, that's okay. Well, the connections are
yeah.
crazy on you then, huh?
Yeah. It's just a small, I mean, it's one of those small world things where everyone's kind of,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is she nice?
people know each other. She's wonderful. She's really sweet and wonderful. And
Hmm.
so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work with her on like an actual project. I just email her a lot on like
Yeah.
whimsical adventures. But
Oh, good, good. Yeah.
that's my story, and she's awesome. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no bad blood, no bad blood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But so the album, right? As for the future,
Yep.
not I let me get my bearings. The
Yep.
band, As for the Future,
Yep.
the
Yep.
name,
Yep.
where did that come from? Because As for the
Oh,
Future is
okay.
kind of like an interesting, 4 letters,
Yep.
kind of short
Yep.
words.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It comes, and it's also like, I'll say this about the name. I figured it had to be either a, a significant amount of words. I think that's the way I felt it had to be, was because I feel like every band name is taken. Like I would go to, over the years for different projects, I would go to streaming sites and I'd like plug in this and everything was taken. And it was just like kind of like, oh gosh, what even bother? So I thought like 4 words, that's a nice thing. That's a pretty good, that's a good amount of, you know, that's a good number of words that should be okay to use. And so but the name comes from, there's a Brazilian author named Clarice Lispector. And she's sort of legendary in Brazil and in sort of in the literary world too. She's kind of had a big resurgence over the last 5 or so years. And she has a book called The Hour of the Star. And the way the book starts off is she says the hour of the star, and she gives like a whole bunch of alternate titles that the book could be called. And As for the Future is one of them. And that sort of name just really kind of like spoke to me, especially because it was during COVID when this all kind of, and of course, obviously we're still in COVID because I have COVID.
Hmm.
But during the sort of like, you know, summer of 2020 and maybe early 2021, when I was thinking about like names for the group, As for the Future had a very like, everyone was like, oh, when we get out of this, and what would the future be like, and then it had a sort of futuristic sci-fi kind of feel to it, and then I had my one of which you can see right back here is my friend Bernie Deschamps, an amazing photographer, took a number of photographs in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil, and it's
Hmm.
very like futuristic architecture. And I was like, that could go with the name, and so that was where sort of everything went from there. But that's where the name came from, was this Clarice Lispector book, and yeah, and it's that's that.
I mean, a great story. And then that, as soon as you said like title and like a list of alternates, I thought
Yeah,
of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They had a metal album last summer called
yeah,
Petro Dragonic Apocalypse or The Night of the Dawn, and then like 30 other
yeah,
million words.
yeah, yeah.
Great album if you haven't listened to it. But
Okay, cool.
uh, those similarities are always fun to see in music.
Yeah, yeah,
And then the question would be, right? It's a collective. Would you
yeah.
want to change out musicians after, I guess, this album cycle?
Um, the answer to that I would say is no.
Mhm.
It's a band net, in it's a band now. Um, when the group started, because it was recorded almost entirely remotely. And it was just sort of like, who was around and stuff. I mean, there is definitely like kind of a to revolving on it to a degree, in terms of if someone can't do a show, we don't necessarily, we have to have kind of a quorum to take a show. But
Mhm.
then, but if people can't do it, then there are people who can do it and other things. But I think the idea is to have it, even though it's a band, to have it have somewhat of a looseness to it. This is a hypothetical show that I'm going to mention, but we did a gig in September at a club in New York called the Cutting Room. The drummer Ray Rizzo has a group called I Get Wild, which is a Talking Heads tribute group.
That's so cool.
And I'll say this is a real thrill, which is that Mauru, who is basically David Byrne's percussionist,
Yeah.
sat in with them on a whole bunch of songs that he had played numerous times with David Byrne, and so they got a real kick out of that. But at that time, my wife had COVID. And so I was kind of like in the apartment trying to quarantine and trying to determine if I, was sick, in order, whether or not I was going to do the gig or everything. And it never came to this, but there was like the possibility, like I might have tested positive that day and I couldn't do the show. And I would have put it out to to the band. I would have encouraged them to be like, hey, you guys should just like get up and play. Like, even though I'm not going to be there and I'm not going to sing these songs, and you know, you guys are all amazing musicians. You should just kind of go for it and do like a set that's maybe kind of something like what we do, or something like that. And so that would have been sort of an extreme example of what, my hopes are for the group, is that like, even if I can't make it, the group can exist in some way. And I think that is sort of a key element to the band is that I have this vision of it doing many things, like there'll be the next record will have some instrumentals, and like maybe another record in the future will be like a themed record, and maybe we score a film that's, playing live, like ideas like that. Like that's sort of, I have very kind of big picture, you know, hopes for the group, which is which rather than this idea of like it just checking a box, like, okay, great, I made a Brazilian record, let's move on. Like it's the idea of like I really wanted to sort of, I just want this to be the beginning. That's my hope for it.
The beginning. I
Yeah.
mean, that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And then yeah, Maru was
Yeah.
super awesome reading his Wikipedia page. I read a lot of
Yeah.
Wikipedia pages.
Yeah.
That was so
Yeah.
cool, especially because Talking Heads did a reunion. I think it was
Yeah.
last night or the night before. Same
Yeah, on
as REM
Thursday.
did their reunion.
Yeah, yeah.
And saying all the stars are co-aligning. I think
Yeah.
someone said that that was the first time that REM and Talking Heads were performing or like together at the same time since 1983, which is
Wow, crazy.
insane. So
That
just
is nuts.
little history. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, the people is like incredible.
Yeah.
Like you're I feel like you're a little bit understating your like book of personnel that you have.
Ah,
Like I
yeah.
don't know, you have like a whole database or whatever. It's insane.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
keep saying
I mean, to me,
insane.
it's just sticking around and being around and playing, and I've just been able to be. I'll say this too. This is kind of crazy. Is like, I had a day job for basically the last 20 years, and so I've been based in New York. Any touring that I've done has been for like a week or 2 weeks at absolute most. Like I'm not like a road musician in any way. But but I've had the good fortune of just being involved in different projects, and I should say there's a show that I'm the music director of called Wesley Stace's Cabinet of Wonders, and that's been going on since 2009. And that show has been, it's like every show is like six different, it's like at least 4 or 5 different musicians and songwriters that are guests, and like amazing people, and that's been going on since 2009. And so so I've been doing that for 15 years, and so I've had the opportunity to play with a lot of people through that. And so there's just been a lot of, it's been a lot of, just cool stuff.
So we have 5 minutes. I'm gonna give you a loaded question, and we'll see how you
Oh
do
my
it.
God,
Okay.
jeez. Yeah.
um, you got to give me three of something. So the way you can do this, and this can be any category. You can do three songwriters, three books, three
Yeah.
countries. Again, these categories are you can change them, or
Yeah.
if you'd rather do one of each. So you can do three of one or one of each.
Three of
Any
one.
categories, three. And the thing is to change someone's life. You're at 4:30. Let's go.
To change someone's life.
For the better or for the worse?
Wow. Ah, ah. Oh gosh. Oh
My favorite
man.
question.
Yeah. Wow. Well, get ready for 4 minutes and 13 seconds of silence. Gosh. What I'm like thinking three categories, things that would change people's life. Um, Come on. I don't know. It's it's hard to it's hard to say. Um, oh man. Wow. I have like no idea. Um, well, let's see. I don't know. I'm gonna go with something that is kind of um I'm gonna go with something that's a bit of a, well, let's see. Okay. Um um, okay.
Not to hurry you, but we're at 3 minutes. So
I know. Jeez, this is so hard. I was just like not even, I wasn't ready for this at all. Okay. I'm gonna say three artists with the last name B that I revere. And
okay,
and
okay.
I'll mention all of them. And so the first one is Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentinian fiction writer. And he is amazing, and his sort of way of writing to me kind of like it's 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 like you question what's real and what's not real. And I think it's a very kind of important way to sort of, to view art, to have that sort of uncomfortable, like it's good to have parameters in terms of like this is real, this is not real. But there's always just a little inkling of like what, you know, something that makes you think about like what you're experiencing and how you're experiencing it.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
that's and he's a very and all of his writing is most of his writing is very short, like little short stories and essays and poems, and they're all fantastic. So that's important. David Bowie is another artist whom I revere, and and to me that's the idea of like feel free you know to keep searching for what you want, you know, as an artist, and to make yourself uncomfortable. Uncomfortableness is fine, like you're not going to be welcome everywhere, but it's good to sort of try things if you go into things with like a sincere heart and passion for things. That's that's important. And then third would be, let's say, and Kate Bush is another artist whom I revere, and something that I think is significant about her that I've heard that she's mentioned about her records is that she starts from scratch every time. And I think that idea of a clean slate, the ability to not basically like be held on to something in the past because of something you've done.
We're at like 30 seconds. Here, say your last thing. My bad.
Okay, so yeah, no worries. So yeah, so you know, the idea of not having to the idea of not having to sort of hold on to things that you've done in the past, or be held down by it. The idea of like every time you want to start fresh, you can. And for Kate Bush, it's an album cycle, but for others, it could be every day. Every day you have the ability to start anew, and to look at things as like this is a like I'm a different person than I was yesterday
Yeah.
in a way.
All right.
So,
Thank you so much. I need to cut you off there because I don't want to get cut off. I don't want to cut you off. It's been an honor talking to you, and I need to really. I'm gonna
this
go
is